And we are live.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Ready to go fishing today. Fishing.
Yes, fishing.
You ready? You ready to get hooked? Hello, everybody.
ready
You
to
see
get
everybody
hooked.
from all familiar faces. Hello, aloha, Salissa, Hawaii, Arizona, Spain, Ontario, Idaho, New Jersey, France, UK. Hey, Harry, I'm in the UK.
Fantastic.
If that counts. Peter, hello. We'll call everybody
All
out. But
over.
hello.
I love the hats. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
So, as you all know today, we won't give too long today for kind of people to arrive and find virtual seats because we've got a lot to go through. Welcome to our new show, our new event, Hook 'em, where a lot of the AutoCrit community have sent in the first lines of their stories for us to kind of take a look at, check the openers, and see if they do have a kind of hook built in there, something that would keep a reader interested from the moment, as soon as the starting pistol goes, it's like, oh, I am into this. So we did have hundreds of openers sent in to us. Obviously, in the space of an hour, we are not going to get through all of those. So trying to be as fair as possible, we took everybody's entries, totally randomized them, and just put them in the list, and we'll go from top to bottom and get as far as we can. So hopefully be as quick as possible. Now, as we go, we'll kind of gamify all of this too. We'll obviously put the lines up on the screen, give some feedback on them. I'll be kind of emceeing, so I think it'll primarily be Daniel and Catherine giving some feedback and suggestions there. So did it hook? Why does it hook? If it doesn't, why not? What can you do to fix it? And everybody there in the chat, feel free to, again, if you have any ideas for lines of your own, pop them in, have a chat about it. Of course, be respectful with people's entries. And also, one thing we like to do too is off the this kind of opening line or whatever, see if you can guess what genre it is. That's always a fun little game to play. So do get involved. Don't feel like you just have to sit there. And of course, if you see your own line, we can give the titles of the stories, but we won't give names in particular. But if you see your own line and you feel like calling it out, feel free to call it out. Give us some emojis or something like that in the chat to say that's you.
You can wait until you see the reaction too.
Indeed. So, with that said, I think we're a couple of minutes in, so hopefully we've got enough people in to sort of kick off here, and we have a lot of banners. So, are we ready for our first?
Bring it on.
Entry.
Oh yeah, let's go fishing time.
Patty could talk about the fires all day.
So we know the story's about Patty.
Yeah, no, I like it. It would make me want to read the second line. It's not like a stunner, but it's good because it tells me a bit of conflict in terms of fires. But yeah, she's talking about it all the time, so it's a question, right? Why are there fires going on? And she's just talking about it, which sounds a little casual to be talking about fires. So I am intrigued. Yeah. I'm
intrigued too. It does make me wonder, or miss what genre it is, or maybe a little bit stronger hook. Like, what's the conflict there? If the fires have already happened, or are these fires she's planning on setting?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I would agree with Daniel on my side. I do find it intriguing. Of course, talk about the fires all day. What are the fires? The fires. There's a real kind of weight or something put onto those. So I would move on. Yeah, I would definitely look forward to the next sentence and see what's going to happen. As I said, it doesn't contain a whole lot of everything you want drama-wise, conflict and all of that, but there's enough intrigue there to keep me going. And that one is from A Clear-Eyed Girl.
Oh, love that title.
Which is a middle grade.
Oh, okay. Wow. I could see that now with the word choice. Yeah.
I see in the comments, yeah, is she like a fire starter or an arsonist? Perhaps. She talk about how much she loved fires all day.
Maybe she's wants to be a firefighter. I don't know.
It almost makes me wonder if it's like a historical.
Yeah.
And our next line, let's move on to the next one. They lived in the darker recesses of the earth and preferred their tea unadorned.
I love it.
Yeah, well, obviously you have such a contrast there. I'm sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
Oh, no, I was just saying I also prefer my tea unadorned. I connect with these characters already.
Yeah, it's a great character link. I'm getting fantasy with the darker recesses of the earth, maybe like an urban fantasy sort of thing, and there's like demonic characters, but yet they're very human, and the fact that they have a quirk like not wanting their tea, they want their tea unadorned. I like it. Yeah,
I do too.
yeah, it's
I
really
would want
good.
to read more.
Solid.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, there's so many questions wrapped up into it that it's you can't help but go, yeah, tell me more.
Yeah.
This is from Neighbors of God.
Ooh.
The genre when it was submitted was simply listed as fiction, sadly, so I can't tell you whether it is fantasy or urban fantasy or anything like that. But I would certainly read it.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
too.
I would keep reading it. Do they live in Yorkshire?
Coming up next. Don't touch the tea. And don't leave the bag in the cup. Going home was like holding a woman, something he didn't do often enough.
This is a good one. I love the tone that it sets here. Like, we have an idea of the tone we're going to read through the story. And also, you know, oh goodness, is this going to be like Christmas Eve dinner? Like, the drama setup in it is very intriguing.
Yeah, it's definitely, it gives you two conflicts, right? It gives you character conflict and a conflict where he doesn't think he's going home and he's worried. Obviously, he doesn't think he does it enough, which means there's a reason why he doesn't do it enough. And so, yeah. This feels like this is maybe romance just because of the subject, but
yeah, it was kind of a strange one. There's enough kind of built into it, I think, in terms of intrigue. However, how it is built, I would have to read on a little later to figure out whether this is a limited point of view or omniscient, in which case is kind of a judgment on the character or the character's internal conflict, where again, yeah, he's worried about a lack of partnership in his life, and B, not being home, and potentially, as Peter says, could be a serial killer.
Yeah.
Now the story itself is called Hard Goodbyes, and it's listed as historical fiction.
Yeah.
So
I do agree with the people that say you can almost get a sinister vibe from it. When you talk about holding somebody, that's an interesting word choice. So I could see where I didn't think that's where the author went with it, and with that title, I don't think so either. But
yeah, I don't feel it baked into this particular line. But correct. Yeah, you could think like holding in the basement, or
right?
That is
holding
a whole
can
other
sound really restrictive. It's like it's not like hugging, embracing.
Yeah.
Now, some of our lines are a little longer than you would expect for a first line, so they're going to show up on the screen in a ticker. Was the only way I could kind of technologically make it work. So here we are mixing things up.
Okay. The northern spire was a lonely place with a romantic view of the forest, ringing the Academy for Magitech talents that was perfect for confessing love, contemplating what to eat for dinner, or for tossing the pages of a rejected research proposal, which was what Finn was doing now.
That is a very long.
It's a very long line. Specifically, that last clause is very not necessary, because obviously that's what they're doing now. Or I guess it's not obvious that's what they're doing now, but it's not necessary to include that in that first line. There's so much crammed into this. However, I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to set the stage. They're trying to set the scene. But what's interesting is it ends up being kind of just a bit of an information dump. It's not really telling me much about the character. It's kind of telling me about the setting, which is, I guess, somewhat interesting, that it can work either for contemplating your food or rejecting a research proposal. I don't know if I think of that as a hook. Yeah. I think a better hook would be to just jump into what the person is doing.
Yeah, and I think one of the things here that this makes me think of is every sentence should serve a purpose, right? So here we've got multiple purposes sort of contributing to that run-on feel. Like the romantic view of the forest could come at any point in this paragraph after this. So, knowing that this person could confess love there or contemplate what to eat for dinner there, that's a normal part of life. And sometimes that normalcy can take away from your opening hook. And it's good to have the world building, just maybe not in the very first sentence.
Yeah.
Yes, for the author of this, I would say echo much of that. It's way too long. You could see as Daniel kind of getting to the end of it, especially when we come to the comma in that last clause, is running out of breath. It's far too much to actually read. The thing is, to correct this, I would say your opening hook, or really getting in there, is going to be starting with character action. And what is that? What's going on? Finn is burning rejected research proposal pages. So this information is drip it out in order of what's really necessary. So you open with Finn throwing the pages in the fire. Give us a sense of what he's feeling in that moment. Does he throw it in the fire and stamp on it? And we're like, oh, this guy's angry, burning something. What is it? And then he's like, another research proposal cancelled. And then he leaves the room, walks down. At that point, you get to describe the Northern Spire, if that's what he's doing. And then we introduce the world. So he walks out the doors, let's say at the bottom, and we're in the Magitech Academy. All around, there's people walking around, and people are contemplating what to eat for dinner. People are confessing love to each other. This is now we're in the open world that he's going into. So there's kind of a transition there. And you get to set that scene, set the stage and everything as quickly as possible there, but do it in a fluid way. So always think about just that order of information. And what's more important? That people are more important. So get him in there first. Next, we have another ticker.
Ooh,
this one I did. There's a couple, I think, where I have allowed them in, even though because the first sentence is technically one word. We can't really go off that. So we have a couple there.
Silence, a rarity for a single mom, and a moment to spiral into the despondency that is always near, squeezing my eyelids shut and straining my ears to maybe, just barely, catch a wisp of his voice emanating from my desperate mind.
So this one's a little long too. The second one, obviously, not silence. But I think that for me, they could have easily cut it at a rarity for a single mom, period, and made a moment to spiral into its own sentence, and I would have still kept reading, because those two short sentences together would have sort of framed what's coming next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Obviously, narrowing in on a character who's like a mom trying to experience a moment of silence, and it's very hard to do that as a mom. It's something very relatable, right? And that's a tension point. And then you have this trying to listen to something, and that's obviously intriguing, because what exactly is that talking about? Is it some sort of like supernatural thing? Is it? I mean, it's kind of that's where it seems like it is. So that's pretty intriguing. But yeah, I would say that it's not one of those things where you are doing the first sentence as a hook. It's like the first few, and I think with all of them together, it makes sense.
Yeah, because ultimately, an agent or a reader is going to give you the first few sentences or first sentence. And if you don't hook them in that beginning, then you may have lost your opportunity. But it depends, too, just on a lot of things, the cover and stuff, too. Of course, the focus of this is, would I keep reading based on the first sentence? And this one's intriguing. You just have to get into sort of like that third sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it does have enough built into it. I would simply, from my perspective, I'd probably combine silence and a rarity for a single mom. So that's a statement. Silence, a rarity for a single mom. And again, if you're in that kind of position, you read that and you go, tell me about it. And
right,
and you're interested. So of course, just a little bit of tweaking there. And I forgot to say what that one was from. That is from Anything But Love, which is women's fiction.
Nice.
Next up, the speeding gig materialized like a phantom on the seemingly empty road.
What's a gig?
Yeah, that's my question too. I know if gig is like work, is there a jargon? Is there like another dialect version of that word that I'm not aware of?
Somebody in the comments may be able to say that, because I noticed one thing I should let people know if you're viewing as well, and I guess Daniel and Catherine, because I didn't tell them this either, is the entries I am copying in verbatim. Some may have typos that are quite obvious, but I'm just going to put them in the way because I don't want to start editing things and presuming.
Yeah.
I could tell this written in British English with the S materialized.
Right.
I thought reading that
too.
gig might be something used over here in terms of something like, in terms of like whirligig and things like that. But I have not heard of anything a gig.
Speeding gig almost makes me feel like it's maybe a vehicle of some kind.
That's what I thought too. Is it's some term for like a nickname or some term for some sort of vehicle of some sort.
It's a great example too, just to think about where your audience that you're going to be publishing it in is, and do they know the vocabulary you're using? Is there a more standard one that can be more international? Because we've got a huge range from UK and US and Australia, and there are certain words that are used in certain countries.
I believe I figured it out. I believe it is a carriage. It is a light two-wheeled sprung cart pulled by one horse. So that would be where, to Catherine's point, from an audience standpoint, it could be you're writing historical fiction and everybody knows what it is. It's a risk, but because that's kind of where my mind was going, but I just wasn't sure.
Okay, yeah. Now that you say that, Daniel, that makes sense, because the story itself, Beryl's Blessing, is listed as a historical romance, Regency.
Yep. So to some extent, using that word is actually cluing into the audience time frame. So it may not actually be a problem.
Yeah, and then it's going to be reader specific, because either somebody's going to go, I don't want to have to read something that I have to go to Google for, or they're going to pick it up and be like, oh yeah, this is intriguing, and I've got to find out more about what this situation is, regardless of maybe not knowing the words. So it's writer's choice here.
Yeah.
And any other comments on it as an opening hook?
I love the hook. I would read about a carriage materializing in the middle of the road.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, editorial wise, I don't like the word seemingly being thrown in there. It kind of takes up space, because the seemingly empty, well, the road's empty or it's not. And when this carriage materializes like a kind of phantom on it, well, then it's not empty anymore. So the seemingly just kind of bogs things down there. I would cut that. But otherwise, yeah, I'm all for, as Peter says in the comments, a headless horseman. I know that's not what it's likely going to be, but yeah.
And just to get in putting my historical fiction hat on, road sounds modern, but I could be wrong.
I guess it depends on how historic.
Although you can comment down there, you'd be like, "No, it's not. Road has been used since the 14th century."
This makes you want to know.
But road sounds kind of modern to me. I think if it would have said down the lane or something, then it would have been clear that I'm in a different time frame or something, and so then I would have been able to pinpoint gig a little easier.
Or has the gig been transferred to a modern day road, and here they go down the interstate?
Oh, there we go.
Time travel and everything. The next one there, we have Shrill Wails Jar Me Awake.
That's a hook.
I mean, it's a little bit of a hook in terms of, something's crying and it wakes you up. Obviously, waking up is pretty cliche, because it's just like a way to start the story. So that's not particularly engaging. It's not bad, but I wouldn't say I find it that hookish.
Yeah, I think it's all right. I would read more. I think this is the kind of one that definitely needs a second or third sentence added on there to get a full picture of what's going on. But again, it has kind of questions built into it. What's the wheels? What's going on? Is this a horror story? Is this a kid? Is this, what is it? Somebody being attacked.
The word whales is kind of interesting, because
foxes. But the story itself is just this side of the truth, which apparently is a contemporary young adult. So it could be really any number of things without having the more detail. Oh, this is a good one. I've always had anger issues.
Oh, this packs so much for such a short sentence. It lets us know something's going to happen, that it's going to be anger related. Why is he mad? What does he do? And then they, and also, it makes you wonder, okay, who are they? And it gives you an insight into their character from the very beginning. That's a lot in the first 5 words.
Yeah, it's very it doesn't give you a great amount of information, but it's very power packed in that because it gives you, like Catherine says, the idea that either it sounds like this person has just done something that was a result of their anger, so that's a question. And then it's they've always had it, which means they're aware of it and they haven't overcome it. So that's a question. Are they going to overcome it in this story? How does it manifest itself? So yeah.
Yeah, it catches itself. I think it's an easy one to hook as well because it's hooking into a very extreme human emotion right off the bat. You're really kind of taking advantage of that, so that works. This is from a thriller called "My Life as a Superhero" by Bruce Banner. No, it's actually by the Light of the Moon.
I was like, what? You were got like for a second here. I'm like, what?
I have to read the story about the superhero with
a little nerdy note in there if anybody recognizes Bruce Banner.
Yes, thank you.
The next one is the passenger's beer breath permeated the car as he leaned between the seats.
I'm on the fence because what I don't like about it is this isn't telling me about. Well, I don't think this is the protagonist because if it is the protagonist, then why are they called the passenger? And if they aren't the protagonist, then why are we focusing on somebody else? Although it does make me ask questions. I do like permeated. That's a good verb to use there. It's quite visceral. So beer breath permeating. It's like it just kind of sets the tone really well. So I like that. I don't love it. I mean, I'm mixed. It would make me read further though.
Yeah, I can see the scene in my head. Mm-hmm. But again, it makes me wonder, is this possibly maybe a first person? And so that's why they don't open with a sentence about themselves. I'd want to read the second sentence. If it's not first person, it sort of makes me go, is the story dealing with possibly the passenger the whole time? And not just them. Is this a secondary main character? Maybe.
Yeah, to me, I kind of fall into that as well. As soon as I read this, I imagined that this is a first-person story about a taxi driver who's dealing with different kinds of passengers and things like that. So we're opening with a kind of high conflict situation with the drunken light leaning between the seats and breathing all over the place. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, well, okay, that's fine. We're opening with a focus on that because that's what's on the narrator's mind right at the time. Now, this is, assuming we're correct that it is a first-person story from the perspective of a taxi driver. So then it would be fine to swing round to them. But again, that's a lot of assumption to have to make without seeing the rest of it. But otherwise, I think it does enough in the beginning. I would like to see something baked into it if it were to be a first-person narrative from the taxi driver's perspective, like a judgment of this passenger built into it in some way would be a stronger hook because I'm straight into that narrator's mind at that point.
I don't think it can be a taxi driver. Well, maybe I guess it could be, but if it would, I would want it to be permeated my car. That would help a lot.
But if
it is first person, but
that's
if it's
true.
Yeah, because even though a first person could say the car, I would hope that if it is first person that they would say my car, because that makes a huge difference, because now you have tension built in about them violating their own property. And
yeah, well, that one is Twice Upon a Griffin, which is a romance novel. If anybody guessed that from the opening.
I did not.
Female taxi driver falls in love with a
potentially with a drunken passenger. The next one we have is again a series. I because we open with one word, I couldn't just choose one word, so it's kind of a battery of words.
Overworked, overstressed, overtired,
acidified, overwhelmed, underpaid, unappreciated, unwanted, unloved. It's hard to read. Obviously, it's very it's a little writerly. It's a little purplish, like it just draws attention to itself. Though honestly, the word that stands out the most is over acidified, because it's like that's kind of scientific and specific. Mm-hmm. So I almost would rather them just start with that, because if you start a book and you say I'm over acidified, I'm like, that's interesting. I want to understand why you have that perspective.
This almost makes me think it's got a nonfiction vibe to the style that it has right now. If I read it, it'd be like, is this sort of leaning into more self-help type stuff because they talk in those short, punctuated statements.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd read the next paragraph based on this, but it's hard to tell whether I would read this and be like, this is the book for me. I'm going to love this book based on this.
The other thing that's weird to me is that it goes over, then un, and that's a little. I don't quite because even if it's like a device, I don't quite understand that from a device standpoint.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, kind of putting it in there, referring to it as a battery of words, it kind of is, which makes it a very rocky opening to have to overcome that many. Yeah, I'm seeing some comments like 3 would be enough for something like this. I'd kind of like to bring down to maybe 5. Is probably the most you'll get in a battery like this before people just start to get annoyed. Now, I believe the over-acidified thing, if I'm correct, people can correct me if I'm wrong, is one of these like drink apple cider vinegar every morning to lower the acidity in your body, and which is like when you get stressed, the acid rises, and that's what causes bone cancer and all this kind of stuff. So the that in there kind of makes sense in terms of everything that this person seems to be saying is happening to them, and it feels to me like a battery of these are the things I am. And I'm gonna lay them all out for you, but it feels like too much. It may be worth stylistically in the story. Maybe you cut it in half or take a few and intersperse them throughout.
I think if you would have done 2 mundane words and then the over acidified, the this is kind of normal, this kind of normal, and then this is kind of specific, I think that would have grabbed me better.
And next, let me just check actually.
What was that one, Gary? What was the title on that one?
That's from The Fire Down Below, which is non-fiction.
Catherine got it.
You maybe got something, Catherine.
I wonder if it's like a manual. If it's not even like
it gives me.
It's like talking about yourself. It's like, does this make you think about yourself?
Yeah, somebody did mention it in the comments there. It's just scrolled off my screen. I don't want to say somebody, but Harry mentioned stomach trouble. Perhaps maybe the title does lead into something like that. So potentially. Yeah. And our next one is there.
Lester scratched his nose with a grubby fistful of bedraggled flowers and wished with all his 6-year-old heart that his sister could marry him so his young life wouldn't change. Okay, interesting.
My interest is piqued.
Yeah, my interest is piqued. The one thing I will say is that I'm struggling a bit with this is that on the one hand, I'm told that this person is a 6-year-old, and then on the other hand, you have the word choices of grubby fistful of bedraggled flowers, which doesn't sound very 6-year-oldish, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I'm just saying like it does kind of take me in a bunch of different places mentally as this is going on. I don't quite find my footing tone-wise, or it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't quite give me a mental picture.
I mean, I feel like I would have been just as hooked if we skipped the whole scratched his nose thing and just went to Lester wished with all his 6-year-old heart that his sister could marry him so his young life wouldn't change.
I agree. I think that actually would have been stronger.
I mean, obviously it looks like, to me, his sister's getting married possibly to somebody he either doesn't like, she doesn't like, or that's going to change their family dynamic, and he doesn't like that. And I love that just hook in that single sentence.
Yeah,
I agree. I'm not too concerned with the verbiage that much this beginning, because it could be an omniscient narrator. We're just being told the story by somebody of wiser years.
That's true.
But I do think that a much better, just right up initial hook is Lester wished with all his 6-year-old heart. Just start from there, and then you can move on to the detail of what they're doing within the confines of the scene. I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, and that was from, let me check my spreadsheet, The Mageling, which is a fantasy.
Okay, well then that starts to explain some of that word choice there too.
And next up, the 2014 Kia Soul had a brake pedal like a hair trigger.
I mean, I think this is a really fun sentence. The problem for a hook for me is I don't know what the story is about because I don't think it's going to be about the car. And they can say, well, when you hear a brake pedal like a hair trigger, that sounds negative, like they're
Maybe it's in racing.
criticizing.
It's like Fast and Furious book
I
form.
guess. Yeah. I mean, it's not that it's bad. It's just it's hard for me to get my footing from this sentence because it's just describing something in an interesting voice, but it doesn't really tell me much about the story.
Yeah, I wish we had more context about, why that's a problem in this situation. Like he was so and so was driving down or racing down the road, or just as he thought he'd made it out of the reach of the bad guys, his 2014 Kia Soul had a brake pedal like a hair trigger. It's just like, I don't know.
I mean, it seems like it's from the voice of somebody who knows cars well because they're specifically calling out the 2014 Kia Soul. So, I'm getting a sense of who's talking to me. I just don't know much beyond that.
We have Celissa owns a Kia Soul and she loves it. I would say, this line for me, it's a keep reading. There's enough built into that to go, okay, what's going on? It could be somebody, like, I would expect this would be a good lead into like a comedic opening of somebody on there doing their driving test or in the middle of a driving instruction session. That kind of thing is a nice little lead up to it. So, yeah, I would want to know what's up next. That one is from This Little Piggy, which is a cozy mystery.
Okay, yeah. It does sound like a cozy mystery with those sort of specifics.
We've got all these Kia Soul owners.
I know, right? Chat. I'm left out.
I need to join the Kia Club. Our next one is I had to hide an 8-foot alligator.
Wow. Well, that's fine, of course.
Yes.
The one thing that yeah, it's good. I mean, I wouldn't mind a little bit more, but it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think I would like to see something wrapped into it that gives a real, again, sense of the narrator's attitude to having to do this. Right. Some kind of way that it could start with a better way of just having a sigh or whatever it is that tells us how they feel about it. But right away, it's like, yeah, I'm going to read this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
Right now, it honestly makes me think it's written toward a middle grade or a young adult audience because of like the simplicity of it, and yet at the same time, it's the first person. And I had to hide an 8-foot alligator without giving all the extra details may tend to be a younger reading level. Not that that's a bad thing, even if it's not a young adult or a, middle grade, but it's just sort of the vibes I get from it.
Mm-hmm. Well, this one is from Son of Fate, which is an urban fantasy. So you might be right there in the area.
Yeah, that makes sense then.
I'll let you read the next one, Daniel. Boom.
One more in an ever-increasing series of surprise pop-up storms left me returning home from school battered and bruised.
Ouch. Instant relation to this character.
Yeah. I like the voice that I'm getting in here because when you say surprise pop-up storms, I don't know, just the way they put it like that, I'm getting kind of a youngish sort of vibe. Mm-hmm. And then they're returning home from school, obviously. So I'm assuming like high school, not college, the way that this is phrased. But yeah, I think it's clear setting of a scene, and it's giving me a sense of the character's emotional state. So it does a lot. It's good.
Yeah, I like this one too.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. I think again when my editorial brain kicks in, I'm not so sure about the combination of surprise pop-up storms. Surprise pop-up kind of feels a bit redundant, stuck together. And maybe just find something stronger to say there about in terms of that sense of surprise. But other than that, love it.
You also have one more in an ever increasing. That's a little redundant too. But I felt like that was almost like a word choice. Like this person just speaks a little redundant.
Yeah, when it comes to ever increasing, I'm kind of fine with that. I know it gets frowned upon, but it gets into the mind of somebody as like it's just getting worse and worse. Just really a way of saying that. Last time we thought it wouldn't, and then it got worse, and last time before that we thought it wouldn't. But this is from 2131, The Bliss Cataclysm, which is dystopian fiction.
You know what I really love about this one is that it gives the writer's tone so clearly, because you always love reading the first couple sentences and going, okay, I'm okay reading this for the rest of the book. This is comfortable to me. So this would tell a reader right off the bat, yeah, this is a style I like, and they know what to expect.
Yep.
And our next, I believe this is a typo, but again, I'm copying these in verbatim, but I'm Immortal Bomb.
Instead of I am.
I'm an Immortal Bomb. Oh, that's fun. Because the juxtaposition, obviously, of immortal and bomb is very intriguing. Like, do they mean they're literally something? Like, this is some sort of fantasy? Obviously, the cover would tell me something about that. Or is it just you're constantly about to destroy things? You're just your ticking clock whenever you enter to a room. Or is it some sort of combination of the two, right? But I like it.
I think this has definitely got a fantasy feel to me. Maybe it's my fantasy wishful thinking with the word immortal in there, but
I was thinking more like romance, but
I'm a love bomb.
Somebody
to
very
me,
hard on themselves.
I really like it. I think it's great. Of course, typo notwithstanding, I'm an immortal bomb. I mean, what an opening statement. That's just straight up. Yeah, I'm interested in this. That is the Dark Sun Chronicles, a young adult fantasy.
Okay, it's fancy, yeah. So it's even weirder. So they might actually truly be immortal.
And we have a scroller coming up, so ready to scroll.
All right.
Wailing klaxons and the repeated bellow from the loud-speakers. This is not a drill. This is not a drill. Sent Eric Burns of the Israeli Elite Special Forces Group, the Seret Matkal, into an all-out sprint to the barracks for his weapon and rucksack. All right, so we have a call to action to start things off. I don't feel like this one is too overly long exactly. It's just starting you right in the midst of action, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I would hope that we're going to stabilize a little bit about character and stuff pretty soon within the paragraph. But this is something where it's like, I'm guessing it's some sort of suspense, military fiction, something like that. So just the fact that it's starting, we're gunning in the action, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of excessive detail or character building / world building in it that could be moved to lower in the exact same paragraph. Like, which special force, the fact that he's special forces as opposed to just a soldier, what that special forces group is called, where he is, who's speaking, and the actual dialogue point could technically be underneath it on its own line, and just pick us up with Eric Burns.
Just send him into an all-out sprint to the barracks, because it's like, well, who else is going to go to an all-out sprint but the barracks, but an officer, and then we can find that out. Yeah,
100% agree with what Catherine said. I think it's just too long and packing too much information in there. We can discover that he's part of the Special Forces group. We can discover what they're called. I would probably just open up with the this is not a drill, this is not a drill, and then the detail of the klaxons and the loudspeakers, and he has to get up and sprint, and then we're off to the races, really running. But along the way, we learn who he is and what he's a part of. You don't have to mash it all in there in the opening. And I think just starting with the, this is not a drill, and the alarm going off, and all, that's a compelling little opener. You've thrown us right into the thick of it.
Yep.
For this next one, let me check. That was from The Chemist Action Adventure.
Definitely get the action.
Definitely get the action adventure.
The next one makes me think, who's been watching me? But she drank martinis for breakfast.
Oh my goodness! And I want to know more about her already.
Yeah, that's a good character beat that tells you something about the person. Yep.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what is going on in her life that's making her drink martinis for breakfast. So you want to know more about her as a person. What else does she do? And then you also want to know, why does she do this stuff? The only thing it's really missing is, I'm not sure. I don't really have any idea what genre or overall story theme this is about. Like, she drank martinis for breakfast. because he was always gone before she woke up, or because the work that was waiting for her, the day she'd have ahead of her, better get started early. I don't know if this is our world, sci-fi world, nonfiction. It's just hard to see.
I think all the characters' reasons are probably sort of built into the story there. Like as Alex says in the comments there, that's a mood.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about it, though, is just the way it hits me is that I blank for breakfast. It's like a term people do. It's like, whatever, I do this for breakfast. So I'm taking it literally, but I almost wish it was constructed a bit differently so there wouldn't be any mistaking that this is a literal thing and it's not just an expression in some way. But that could just be me being overly picky.
And I think JB in the comments there makes a good point. Would like a proper noun for her name instead of the pronoun she. Perhaps just the character name, drank martinis for breakfast. Maybe a way to get right into the character there. Again, I don't think it's a major decision, but certainly something to think about, yeah.
Now Jane says, is she on a boat? Hey, Daniel, you got martinis for breakfast over there?
I wish, but no.
Well, this one is from, it's marked as creative nonfiction, and funnily enough, the title is Straight Up 3 Olives. I was going to say, does she have any garnish?
Yes.
The title.
Yeah.
The next one.
The pungent stench of antiseptic nauseates me as I struggle to open my eyes and figure out where I am. I'm liking conceptually where this is going. The way that the words don't exactly flow for me. I'm trying to figure out why, but this obviously feels kind of almost sci-fi, or it's very technical with the terminology. So you're getting a sense of the very grounded kind of visceral sort of piece. This could be horror as well. That's just Yeah,
the beta read side of me is looking at that, figure out where I am after the beginning of the pungent stench of antiseptic. It almost makes me go, well, where else would they be but a hospital or some kind of place of healing? Unless there's something else that makes them think they wouldn't be there. Because if I woke up and all I smelled was antiseptic, the first thing I would think of is, why am I in the hospital?
Yeah, I think that I actually would prefer. I understand why they would have done it for the purposes of this contest, or this show. I would probably actually break up the sentence. I would just say the pungent stench of antiseptic nauseates me. Period. I struggle to open. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think that would just flow better.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot built into that as well in terms of the physiological sensation of nausea. And the ensuing confusion that's all kind of built into this all seem to be things that need to be kind of separated and dissected individually instead of trying to wrap them up in too much.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it's intriguing when you get that sensory detail and they don't know where they are. Very interesting.
I love that it starts with a smell as opposed to a sound or an action.
Yeah.
That's so rare in opening sentences.
The rain
the rain.
Oh yeah, what was that one?
Oh, that is. Oh, that's also listed as Just This Side of the Truth, Young Adult Guitar. I think we did that one, although probably a mess up in my spreadsheet.
The rain was thrashing down and she was soaked through to the bones. So you have a clear image. I think rain, I just think a dark stormy night, it feels a little cliche, but it's not like a deal breaker. It's just not as much of a hook for me in terms of creativity as maybe something else. But in terms of what is going on, it's pretty clear conflict. And so, yeah, I'd potentially keep reading. I do like thrashing down, right? It's a nice verb choice there. So
I like Jenny says, isn't this like waking up? I mean, it is sort of, like Daniel said, almost a little cliched to start with either somebody caught in the pouring rain in the dark or waking up, but it would still make me want to read the next sentence. It's not like I'm going to read this and go, okay, I don't want to read anymore because she's outside getting soaked. So I think it serves its purpose and that it may move me on to the next sentence in this paragraph.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
to Melissa's point, if I was going to get really editorial, I would say I'd prefer the rain thrash down and she was soaked to the bones. Just cut it down a little bit more and make it a little more violent.
Yeah, to my mind, there's something that JB says there as well. You know, the thrashing rain soaked her through to the bone. It is passive. It's a passive sentence. But I would kind of want to read a little more after it, because it also is. It's not just that it's passive; it's also a kind of cliche. All of it, kind of thrashing rain soaked to the bone. It's all these are cliches. So nothing hooking me entirely there, but I would want to see what the situation is. And I would think once I knew what the situation is there a better way I can fold that up to the top, so to speak? Because I'm sure there's something intriguing behind this. It certainly feels like it. But this is from My Warrior, a romance.
I get a romance.
Yeah, I can get that.
We've got a ticker.
Ooh, ticker. In the window of the loading dock tavern, I watched the broken neon light flicker on and off with no sense of rhythm. On for a couple of seconds, off for 10, on for 4, on. The night mist glowed orangey red on an empty sidewalk. I really liked the idea of somebody watching a neon sign with no rhythm, and then I think it just kind of kept going, and it's not all necessary to be in one sentence. I think is there something really kind of mysterious and or pathetic? Like I'm intrigued. I'm like, this person's just kind of staring at us at a thing. Yeah. If somebody said this is great if it's a paragraph, yeah, I feel like all of this, M dashes and ellipses is not doing a whole lot of favors. I feel like you could be doing it with just breaking up lines into short sentences, and it would be better.
Yeah, agree with all that. If it were me, I would probably cut it off. I watched the broken neon light flicker on and off with no sense of rhythm. Now, I would do the dash, on for a couple of seconds, off for 10, on for 4. Then I would probably just paragraph break and on. Just give a single on. And then move on in another paragraph. Again, just for rhythm. It's kind of the way I like to put things in for rhythm. But the actual opening, yeah, you kind of got me there. I'm not quite sure. I want to read more about the setting, because initially looking at this, they're calling it the loading dock and it's a tavern. So I'm thinking fantasy, possibly. But then there's neon lights. So I'm like, are we in a kind of cyberpunk type thing going on here? Or, I don't know if there's neon in steampunk. But
I don't know. I'm getting classic noir vibes from this.
Yeah, I'm getting that a little bit too.
And this is Alley of Broken Dreams, a suspense novel.
Yeah. Suspense makes sense. I mean, it's already starting with things are a little off kilter and there's the ticking thing, Yeah, so that's good. Nice mood. Tad paused in his search as shrieking erupted in the Medina, emitted from a man of oak-colored skin pulled taut over a collection of bones.
I would break this into 2 sentences after Medina.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of rework the very beginning of the second sentence. But based on the Tad paused in his search as shrieking erupted in the Medina, that alone makes me want to keep reading.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree 100%. The thing there as well is, as Catherine said, when we get to the second part, which is technically the second sentence, we're joining it with a semicolon, the clause is kind of messed up there. Emitted from a man of oak-colored skin, pulled taut over a collection of bones, doesn't work as a
that's
a
not a
sentence.
complete sentence. Yeah.
No. So that's got to be reworked. So yeah, I would just have Tad paused in search of shrieking erupted in the Medina, full stop, or period, and then rework the second sentence to give us a look at that man of oak-colored skin.
Yeah, definitely has fantasy vibes, whether it's dark fantasy or another type of fantasy. It definitely feels like a fantasy to me.
Well, you nailed it there with dark fantasy. And it's called Nightmare on Fire.
I might have turned out to be quite a successful psychopath. Yeah, that's fun. That's a nice character introduction. It gives you character voice. You're definitely wanting to read more. It doesn't tell you much story, but it does summarize a character really well. So I like it.
It grabs me because it's like, oh, am I following it from the villain's POV? That is interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Like, is this actually somebody are they using hyperbole or are they legitimately a psychopath?
Yeah, it seems to be, especially when they're saying it might have turned out to be quite a successful psychopath. The language being used there says to me that there's potentially something tongue-in-cheek about this, or at least lighthearted when talking about somebody who's a bit of a messed up protagonist or narrator. So I have bought the ticket and I am on the ride.
Yes.
That is What If Dark Humor.
Interesting.
Ralph stepped into the lab that morning with no reason to suspect in minutes he would be a deaf and blind, bruised skin sack of battered meat and bone. Okay, this is interesting. The interesting thing about this is obviously it's quite a hook in terms of, little did they know. The problem I have with that is I'm not generally a huge fan of the little did they know construction, because that's telling me the work is going to be an omniscient, which is challenging to do. Not that I never read omniscient, but I'd have to keep reading to see how that omniscient tone is going to play out in the book. But obviously, from the standpoint of I'm going into a story knowing something absolutely horrible is going to happen to somebody, I mean, yeah, that's a hook. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, if the author is watching this, I have already actually sort of read the story. But for what it's worth, restating here in the video, I think that I love that we know who we're following, and it gives the suspense of why are they in the lab? What are they doing? What could they possibly do in a lab that would beat a guy up as bad as he's going to get beaten up here? I think, to me, the skin sack of battered meat and bone gives it more of a grisly sound that, I don't know, depending on the genre, maybe isn't quite necessary in the first sentence or could possibly be reworded. But I want to know more about what happens to this poor guy in the lab.
Yeah, this sounds like with that kind of language, I would expect it to be like horror or quite dark. To go that.
Yeah, let's figure out what it is. I think I like it as an opening. It's again with the omniscient approach, but it's that kind of little do they know, or somebody's telling you there, it's like, hey, you're about to come in here and watch a catastrophe. Would you like to do that? I'm like, well, yeah, okay, why not? Especially the stuff I read. So I do like it. I think it's perhaps just a little too long or busy with the multiple commas and additional blind, bruised, skin sack, battered meat and bone. It seems a bit much to try to push in there. Mm-hmm. Something like no reason to suspect in minutes he would be nothing more than a whatever meat sack of battered meat or skin sack of battered meat and bone. Mm-hmm. Just try to bring it back in a little bit, but otherwise, yeah, I'm on board for that. That's up my street. This is from Time Chair, which is a sci-fi.
Seems pretty dark sci-fi, so I'm curious.
He'd be battered meat and bone in 1527. And the next one, the man in the doorway was naked and extraordinarily calm.
Wow. It's got my interest. I want to see what happens next.
This is again where the focus is on, I'm guessing, not the protagonist, which is not necessarily a problem, except the doorway is where might actually make the sentence land a bit better. Because if is this in the protagonist's house, because that's obviously different. Like, is it the man's doorway? Because where they're naked is so important for why they might be calm, because they say extraordinarily calm as if it would be odd. So right, so if it's like the man in the doorway of the grocery store was naked and extremely calm, that hits you very differently than the man was naked in the doorway of my house as I delivered pizza and was extraordinarily calm. So I almost want a little bit more of grounding to know where I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hook on to that contextual question because I think the case of anybody being calm when someone is naked in the room is it's entirely contextual. So that works for me. I think they kind of put that in with the extraordinarily calm as saying that this is not the right context for a naked man to be standing in the doorway. But as you said, I'm kind of removed from what the point of view is here, because if this was from the narrator's point of view, if we were talking first person, say it would be the man in my doorway, and then we've got a whole other kind of thing to deal with here.
Right.
But we don't really know without reading more. But otherwise, gets me.
Yeah, or the man stood in his doorway naked and extraordinarily calm if it's like his place. I'm getting romance vibes from this for some reason. And if that's the case, then it's like, go visit somebody and they open the door and they're naked and you go, oh, wait a minute, why are you so calm?
Well, this is from The Naked Truth, which is a true crime.
Wow.
Okay. Not quite romance.
Condensation dribbled from the too low ceiling, falling like rain on her burning cheeks.
Why is there condensation on her ceiling?
Well, the too low ceiling as well.
Makes me wonder if she's imprisoned somewhere or something.
I also find it weird that the writer is saying that condensation is falling like rain, as if water falling kind of isn't. I mean, I understand that it's not really rain, but it's like it's a weird simile to use because it's like saying water is like water. So that seems a little strange to me as well. But I mean, the contrast of like you have the too low, so there's some conflict going on there, and it's like rain on somebody's hot skin. So there's things going on, but it's not really enough for me to grab onto. I wouldn't not keep reading, but I'm not super intrigued from this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of fall into the same thing. There's details in here like a too low ceiling, and I'm contextualizing why is it too low, whose consideration is that, and why, which I don't think is a good question to hook with, kind of to pull me forward in. Condensation dribbled off the ceiling. Again, I'm not so sure about the word dribbled. Dribbled kind of insinuates it's running down something rather than dripping, dripping off of. So I'm not too sure about the imagery, but the burning cheeks and things, I would certainly read on to the next to see what this situation is. Is it kind of buried alive type deal, or what's happening here? So I would be interested in reading more, but I think it could be more powerful. I think it's one of these kind of ones where if you read through the first paragraph and find out what is the big kicker in there, maybe that's worth shifting up to the top into the beginning instead. Now I think before I lose track of time, we're about 3 minutes in, so I think we'll finish there for today with our samples.
What was the genre on that one?
Oh yeah, the genre on that one was it's called Daughter of Strength, and it is a sci-fi fantasy or science fantasy, I think you call them these days.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
And let me get my controls here, in case anybody doesn't know, I'm in control of what shows up on the stream. So yeah, I hope everybody's had a fun time. Of course, we try to get to as many as possible within the hour. If yours didn't show up, sorry about that. I guess we'll see if we can, come back with another round of this at some point down the line, because it's a lot of fun, and hopefully the advice given helps a lot of you with if you saw your piece come up and whether you're either in really good fitting because we loved it and everybody else in the chat loved it, or
if you want to see more of these, like the video, comment, because we'll listen.
Do all that YouTube stuff.
Engage.
Like,
interact.
subscribe, double click on the bell thing so you get notifications.
Exactly. Do all that.
Even better, if you're not an AutoCrit member at all yet, you don't even have a free account, get over to AutoCrit.com and sign in, get yourself a free account. You'll get our emails that tell you when all of this stuff happens. And it's always happening. Now, one thing I do want to finish with today to let everybody know as well, if you didn't see your line here and you really, really, really want some feedback on it, we're actually doing a special offer for everybody that's here on our first chapter critiques, which is where we'll take a look at the first chapter. Or technically speaking, it's the first 5,000 words of your book, so it might go a little over a first chapter if your first chapter is short. And that is a in-depth, full critique of that opening chapter, so we can tell you everything that's great about it, everything you might want to change, whether it's working, whether it's not. This includes inline comments throughout the whole thing, so you can see what your reviewer is thinking as they go and pointing out issues, and also a side report that kind of brings that all home for you and tells you what's going on. If you want to grab one of those, head to autocrit.com/first chapter, real easy. And as a special offer, as we said, for people here, for the first 10 that pick this up, if you head onto that page and go to the checkout, there's a little thing there that tells you how many are left. For the first 10, we're also bolting on private one-on-one feedback time and consulting for that. So once your report is ready, a member of the team will actually get onto Zoom or Skype or whatever it is you like to use for one-on-one and actually walk through it with you and answer any questions and fill you in on everything that needs to be known about what's going on there. So have a look at that. And also, Anne, tell us about the contest. Next week, we are in full swing to reveal the winners next Tuesday, 1 p.m. And we'll have, we're still trying to work out the final number. It may be 10 or 11 because we want to hit about a 50,000 word count. So we're going to figure out how many, but we'll have the full list by the time we get there. And with that said, I think Daniel has to drop for another meeting. Oh, he's still there.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Like and comment. We'll do this again.
Do all the YouTube stuff. Pop over to autocrit.com/first chapter. Grab your first chapter review. And it doesn't have to be a short story, full novel, anything you've got there that you want to get looked at professionally. And we'll hook you up with a private session as well. So thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.